Thank you very much, everyone, for being here on this very important issues of dealing with Christian persecution in Pakistan. An issue that has got a little bit of attention, but not a lot. I mean, given the fact what's happening, the atrocities, the killing, the discrimination, the blasphemy laws, and so forth, it's about time that this issue gets elevated and gets the recognition it deserves internationally as a real serious violations of human rights. We have a distinguished panel here with us, which I'm happy to moderate. I should have mentioned my name is Mario Silva. I apologize. I'm the Executive Director of IFRIS, a former Member of Parliament of Canada as well, and delighted to share the stage with this distinguished panel. And we're going to have as well a presentation in a few minutes. I believe that we're going to be here until about 4:30, so after the panel discussion, we can, in fact, have some questions and answers. People will be available for that, and then we'll have to wrap it up. So we'll begin a list of people that I have first. The first speaker I'll have is Reverend James Luke. Reverend James Luke is a retired group captain of Pakistan Army. He's also intercultural minister of Greater Toronto Area Missionaries and Lutheran Church of Canada. And please, you have the floor. Please speak, and then you have a presentation as well.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I come from Pakistan, and now I am living in Toronto, Canada. But my concerns are very grave as far as the Pakistani Christians are concerned. Let me give you a little bit of history of Pakistani Christians. Pakistani Christians make only 1.6% of the 182 million population of Pakistan. When Pakistan came into being in 1947, Christians living in this part of India, now Pakistan, kept living there. Their relatives living in India remain in India, so their first drawback happened when families and relatives were split forever. Besides that, Christians have played important roles in the life of Pakistan by giving sacrifices during the 4 wars with India, running education institutions and hospitals. Yet, every Christian has always suffered some kind of persecution. Some of the major incidents are given in the slides that I'm going to show. The first one happened an attack on Shantinagar, a small town in Pakistan. It happened on 6th of February 1997. Literally, and when I say literally, it means literally. Literally, thousands of extremists, Muslims, 30,000 of them attacked that village. 785 houses, 4 churches, 2,500 Christians were forced to flee. And placards read, "Kill Christians." Now the second slide, which I want to, there were 2 slides of this, and I hope somebody is running the slides. Okay. The third slide is about the Texla Christian Hospital bombed on 9th of August 2002. 3 nurses were killed, 23 people were injured when prayers were going on in the hospital chapel. This happened right in the morning at about 7 o'clock. The next slide should be St. Joseph's Colony in Lahore. On 9th of May 2013, 3,000 Muslims rampaged through the town, torching 100 Christian homes. The whole colony was turned to rubbles. 22nd of September, All Saints Church in Peshawar. Now this is the church where I was married. I got married. 22nd of September 2013, 2 suicide bombers blew themselves in the crowded church compound, and 127 people were killed and 250 were injured. The next 2 slides will show you about a young Christian couple. They were thrown alive in the kiln, burning kiln on 10th of November 2014. SHAMA 24 and SHEHZAD Mashi 27, they had actually no crime, but they were just asking for their wages from the owner of the kiln when the owner of the kiln actually threw both of them in the burning kiln, and they were burned alive. Then 2016, March 27, Christians were celebrating Easter, and they were in the park when this attack happened. 75 people were killed, and over 340 were injured in that attack. Then you know about Asia Bibi. She has been in the jail since 2009, and she also did not do anything gravely wrong, but she was charged for blasphemy. And you know that one of the guys, good guys, Governor TASEER, he tried to help her. And also the only Christian federal minister at that time, Honorable Shahbaz Bhatti, tried to help her. And both of them were also killed at the hands of the Muslim extremists. Now, let me tell you why persecution is happening. Why persecution happens? Because there are two reasons for that. One, that Christianity proclamation of the gospel is based upon saved by grace only, whereas Islam is based on work righteousness. These two doctrines are mutually exclusive. Since Pakistan claims to be an Islamic republic, therefore Sharia law is applied wherever and whenever it gives the government of Pakistan leeway in implementing policies. Secondly, the extremism is on the height. You know what is happening all over the world. The extremist groups like Taliban's, Al-Qaeda, Jaish, and Lashkar-e-Jhangavi, name a few, are out of control, and Pakistan cannot control them. And they hit the targets of their own choice, out of which Christians, being the minority, are the main targets, which have no priority in the government's eyes. From the slides, you have a better idea what is happening in Pakistan. Let me a little bit talk about my own personal persecution, because that is the best example that you can give. I can talk for hours, you know what is happening every time. At this time when we are talking, something is happening in Pakistan. Persecution of people. No Christian is free from persecution, no matter what status he enjoys. The best example I can give is of my own. I served in the Pakistan Air Force for 27 years, and almost I topped all the courses. Yet, when it came to foreign courses and foreign assignments, I got the worst. For example, I got selected due to my seniority to be deputed to Saudi Arabia 3 times, but every time my name was dropped and another officer was sent. Saudi Arabia's emoluments were the best. So I was sent to the worst place with the minimum wages, that is Libya. Now, what is the solution to this? And I very strongly recommend that people who are from the journalism, they should highlight this. I thank God for giving me an opportunity to get out of Pakistan, but most of the Christians don't get that opportunity. I can recommend only one action, and that is that Pakistani Christians should be declared the persecuted community by the United Nations. While we are here, we should be able to highlight this, that Pakistani Christians must be declared as the persecuted community in Pakistan, and the United Nations must take up this case and inform all the countries of the world so that when any Pakistani Christians ends up at their borders seeking asylum, they should be put on priority list and taken immediately. Let me tell you by way of this, that in Thailand and Malaysia and Philippines and Sri Lanka, there are thousands, and when I say thousand, it means literally thousands of Pakistani Christians have fled Pakistan because of the persecution and taken asylum there. And they're in a very bad shape. I've had video conferences in Thailand with those people, and those people are really, really in bad shape. So I would ask you people that any who are journalists, you must take up this case with the United Nations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Reverend James Luke, for telling us what's happening on the ground in Pakistan. Our next speaker is a member of Parliament from Poland. He is also the Vice Chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee. Mr. Bronislaw Trzynski, would you please speak?
Welcome everyone. I came from Poland, but I'm also concerned about the situation in the minorities in Pakistan, especially Christians. With increasing influence of extremist Sunni groups in Pakistan, the minorities in the country, and particularly the Christians, have become constant target at the hands of misconceived and uneducated extremist masses, who take it their religion duty to inflict terror on the weaker religious communities. Over the past decade, the killing of the Christian minorities has increased, the Pakistani being ranked 6th by Open Doors, a Christian organization on the list of countries in which Christians are most at risk. The Pakistani government has repeatedly failed to take steps to curb or employ attempts for their relief and upliftments. They have been targeted by killing them through improvised bombs, setting the locality's village on fire, target killings, framing in blasphemy causes, intimidation, forced marriage, forced conversion, etc. The list is endless. Even the lawyers, the NGOs who proceed on behalf of Christian victims and target, manhandled and persecuted. Such is the plight of Christian minorities that live in the nation, which has become synonymous to terror for these minorities. With no government aid or help and the lack of empathy for them to fall back on, the Christians have become not only soft targets for the militias, but also victims of socioeconomic and political exclusion. As a result, many Christians try to flee the country, with more than 10,000 fleeing to Thailand in recent years. Others who are unable to do so live in the fear of the next attack against them. In recent years, Pakistani Christian communities have been regularly targeted with violence. More than 100 homes were set on fire by outraged Muslims in Badami Bagh, Lahore in March 2013, after a Christian man was accused of speaking against Prophet Muhammad. In September of the same year, 81 people were killed and more than 100 injured in twin explosions outside a church in Peshawar. Pakistan's blasphemy law has also proved to be an easy tool to persecute Christians. It can easily be said to be a law that has been most misused against minorities. In one such case, a Christian Pakistani woman that she was mentioned by Pastor James Luke, Asia Bibi, was sentenced to death after being convicted of committing blasphemy. Asia was charged under the Blasphemy Act for merely trying to defend her religious sanctity and in the process her right to life, and under Article 3 of the Pakistani Constitution, freedom to practice her religion. SALMAN, the then governor of Punjab province, was brutally shot dead by his own bodyguard on January 11, 2011 for supporting Asia and criticizing the way in which blasphemy law was practiced in the country. In the present environment of hopelessness and fear, the only option left for Christians is to learn to live with Pakistani deep contradiction, discrimination from the state. There is a serious need for European countries to relook at its bilateral cooperation with Pakistani and put pressure on the country to take effective measures on the protecting Christians. Thank you.
We now like to turn the floor over to Mr. And I apologize for mispronouncing your name. It's Javed Bash.
Yes, please, thank you.
Okay, and then, sorry, one second. He is a former vice president of Canadian Christian Association, past chairman of a Christian community newspaper called Darkan, which means heartbeat, and also is a retired retired major of the Pakistani Army. You have the floor.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for this platform, and I hope it will serve as a catalyst for the civilized world to stand up and recognize the silent suffering of Pakistan, Christian men and women, young and old alike. Today, across the Islamic world, the Christians are marked for annihilation, and Christian blood is shed by the sword with impunity. My attempt here today is simply as a concerned individual to express the fears of Christians before this august house and offer some suggestions on how the corridors of power in the Western world can help to effectively stop killing, persecution, and denial of basic human rights. Attention of the world, and new media are part of it, media interests, political leadership, are all focused on the bloody internal struggle within the Islamic world itself and the resulting refugee crisis, obviously. The barbaric genocide and the killing fields of the Middle East and in Islamic countries like Pakistan, the Christians are ignored. The scale of persecution of Christians is minimized, and the violent persecution continues unchallenged. I share my perspective and offer some suggestions for consideration, not as a scholar, nor an activist of any kind. I share what has touched my heart and what I feel as a member of the Christian community. Before I continue, I would like to apprise you of my personal background and to help you understand where I'm coming from and as I go through this brief presentation. My name is Javed Rahim Baksh, a born Christian, but as my name suggests, I am from a Muslim family heritage. My paternal family, my cousins are Muslims. My father, Ishaq Rahim Baksh, was a civil servant, a judge. I was sort of privileged because of my Muslim heritage and my father's position. I was born and raised in Balochistan, a province of Pakistan. My preschool years were spent in our ancestral small town called Loralai. Later, I schooled in the provincial capital, Quetta, which is now notorious as the town of the Taliban shooter. Growing up in a tribal culture of Balochistan, my childhood relations with the Muslim side of my family, serving and sharing experience with colleagues from upper class society, down to the subordinates from the conservative heartland of Pakistan gave me an intimate insight to the culture, faith, mindset, attitudes of the Muslim majority of various sects, diverse social status, and from different regions of the country. Muslim majority attitude over the years towards fellow Christians. Since the creation of Pakistan in 1947, the country gradually moved towards religious fundamentalism, led by religious clerics with the tacit approval of the political leadership to maintain a hold on the tenuous unity of the country, ethnic, linguistic, cultural population of the country. Pakistan's gradual slide to fundamentalism can be clearly mapped through the decades. I've lived it. From accepting the Christians in the 1950s, to tolerating them in the 60s, to shunning and segregating them in the 70s, down to despising and outright hatred in the 80s. And then from there on, heading to deliberate acts of violence, bloodshed, with the intent to subjugate, convert all Christians to Islam, or their elimination entirely. Despite the laws that may be in place, the governments over the years have neither had the courage nor the desire to enforce them. In reality, Pakistani Christians today are dhimmis, which means subservient people and looked upon as enemies of Islam. Discrimination and persecution is not limited to the militant minority, which you all generally hear this a popular excuse for the apologists for Islamic extremism. There's a minority, extreme minority. Extremism is popular and spread to over 70% of the population. It is now a dangerous majority. The militant mindset in Pakistan has been sponsored and spread through thousands of madrasas, funded largely by wealthy from the Middle Eastern countries. One Pakistani government minister had the courage just recently to publicly vent his frustration over foreign funding, but since has been silent. I wonder why. How does Pakistan persecute its citizens? Number one, blasphemy law. Pakistani law mandates that any blasphemies of the Quran or Islam's prophet is punishable up to a death penalty. This law effectively subdues all Christians into submission, because any Muslim can accuse a Christian of blasphemy, and the accuser does not have to repeat any of the alleged blasphemies as evidence, because that would be blasphemy by itself. This sword is constantly hanging over the head of every Christian, regardless of position, education, or social status. The law in most cases is implemented by a frenzied mob, incited by, of course, religious clerics, who execute mob justice by lynching, burning, killing the victim of a false accusation. An effective and complete gag on Christians to speak, discuss, print, distribute, or preach anything on Christianity, politically or even socially, publicly or socially. A deliberate, devious, institutionalized agenda to deprive Christians of any kind of economic self-reliance, to prevent them from any political or economic platform. Christians are denied jobs. Small businesses boycotted, especially food-related businesses, to keep Christians at the lowest rung of economics and social ladder, as mere cleaners, sweepers, for menial dirty work as a subservient people. Excuse me. Apart from a few privileged Christians, like I was, majority of Muslims will not eat with or share food with a Christian. A Christian laborer was mercilessly beaten for drinking water from a container outside a madrasa. Even during the country's natural disasters such as earthquakes and the two devastating floods that went through Pakistan, displaced Christians were nowhere to be seen in relief camps, which were funded mostly by Western quote-unquote Christian donors. Poor Pakistanis were kept on the fringes to fend for themselves. Burning of churches and institutions, abduction of Christian women, forced conversions, mob justice are alarmingly high and rising with no end in sight. The wave of Islamic fundamentalism within the state and the government structures in Pakistan have caused serious repercussions for religious minorities. Despite efforts by a few concerned groups against the discriminatory laws and practices, nothing substantial has been changed. Pakistan is now a country, dangerous country for Christians. Pakistan is, I'm touching something very sensitive here. Pakistan is one of the only two countries established on the basis of religion. A person's legal right, equality under law are determined by religion. 1,000 years of your heritage on that land are meaningless if you're a non-Muslim. By the very nature of Pakistan's creation, there can be no equality under the law between a Christian and a Muslim. And I use the word citizen loosely here. So after having said all that, how to stop the bleeding and defend the persecuted Christians of Pakistan? Here are my 3 suggestions as a layman. Moral courage, partnership, and carrot and stick approach. Due to intolerance, charged religious emotions, uncompromising attitudes, conspiracy theories, largely an illiterate population, Any steps going forward to reverse this genocide, I call it genocide, should move simultaneously on two parallel axes: government to government and people to people. Moral courage. Without political moral courage, we will fail right at the start line. Either for national strategic interests or internal political considerations or just ignorance of the real jihadist intents, the Western Christian majority nations are reluctant, or I dare say, afraid to speak out on Christian persecution. Presidents, prime ministers, and church hierarchy are reluctant to even acknowledge Christian persecution in Muslim majority countries. Nevertheless, these very leaders are quick to claim racism and come out in defense of perceived Islamophobia, open their arms to Muslim refugee claimants from war-torn regions, but no space or compassion for persecuted Christian refugees waiting to be accepted by the West. An example, reluctantly I have to say this publicly, is my own country, Canada, where our Prime Minister is leading a rock star-style charge against the so-called Islamophobia to suppress criticism and free speech, and is welcoming refugees from Somalia, Afghanistan, Syria, and North African countries as they illegally cross over from a safe neighboring country, the United States of America, but is absolutely silent on the sufferings of persecuted Pakistani Christians, as the Reverend brought out, languishing and dying in detention camps in Thailand. Only a few, like the Prime Minister of Hungary, have demonstrated the moral courage to call spade a spade. And as I understand, Hungary is the first government to open an office specifically to address the persecution of Christians in the Middle East and Europe. And here I must add that despite the alleged controversies surrounding the American President, Mr. Donald Trump, he has demonstrated the moral courage to publicly acknowledge and tell the persecuted Christians that they are not abandoned. Partnership. Build bridges with honorable Pakistanis who seek peace and justice. In a sensitive and emotionally charged culture, the need is urgent for skilled diplomacy and an extended hand of cooperation to build partnership with progressive, moderate Muslims, people of influence, and local non-governmental organizations of Pakistan. For a non-Muslim individual or organization to speak out against blasphemy or Islamic laws is quickly branded as an attack on Islam and used as a tool to incite violence against the Christians. A non-Muslim attempting to speak on Islam is a non-starter. Best is to seek out, work with, and strengthen the moderate Muslim nationalists or organizations working on human rights, women's rights, equal rights, religious rights, regional peace, justice, equality, rule of law, whatever their agenda is, their objective is, their concern is, their struggle is. Together with these progressive Muslims, the Christians can stand a chance to be heard in the halls of power in Pakistan. Identify the regions. The least extremist province of Pakistan is Sindh and Balochistan, while the hardcore fundamentalist provinces are Punjab and the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Northwest Frontier province, and the tribal territories. And might I add that space and influence of honorable, peaceful, moderate Muslims in Pakistan is also shrinking fast. They are being forced into silence, and with accusations of blasphemy and threats of retribution, the time for Christians is fast running out. The third thing I mentioned was the carrot and stick approach. As a layman, I feel here is where the official role of the Western government comes into play. Governments and international organizations can impact decisions. This approach can be an effective tool if the Western leaders negotiate with strength and character, similar to human rights policy initiative years ago under President Carter's administration. Age-old carrot and stick principle of give and take can be negotiated with a country like Pakistan. Its economy is debt-ridden, rampant corruption, dependent on international aid, loans, investments, financial and material help for education, social services, infrastructure, and most importantly, arms and equipment to maintain the professional standard of its armed forces. One of the effective ways Christians in Pakistan are suppressed is denial of economic benefits, education, and real bread earning skills. The Western countries can demonstrate character and courage to insist that every dollar given to Pakistan for any project, a portion is earmarked for the uplift of specific, measurable, and accountable projects of the Christian community, for the Christian community. A clear message communicated that if Christian persecution continues, and I second what Reverend James said, Christians of Pakistan will be designated as a persecuted minority, which could lead to serious international repercussions and isolation for Pakistan. At a smaller scale, develop and support Christian schools in both rural and small cities. Encourage homeschooling, classes paid by volunteer Christian teachers with specific skills. The poor from rural or small towns may not aspire to be doctors or professors, but eager to be skilled tradespeople. To encourage schooling, promote trade schools or include trade classes in Christian schools. This will give the deprived Christian class an opportunity to earn a dignified living and move up the economic ladder. A Muslim family may rarely hire a poor Christian as a cook, food server, dishwasher, but would take on a Christian gardener, auto mechanic, carpenter, mason, caregiver, or health worker. If a determined, genuine effort is needed to appreciate the significance of economic uplift for Christians, it will go a long way in improving their daily life and social acceptance. This, ladies and gentlemen, was, as a layman, what I think, what I experienced, what Christians are facing, and what you can do to help them and raise their platform. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Thank you very much for those very powerful comments. We now turn to our last speaker, which is Naveed Walter, is a human rights defender and founder and president of the non-governmental organization, the Human Rights Focus in Pakistan. And he started his human rights career in 1988 when he was a college student and led Christian student organizations, the CSO. Also an organization's general secretary from 1989 to 93. One of his achievements as a youth leader was a successful struggle to withdraw the decision made by the government of Pakistan to add a column of religious at national identity cards, which was seen as a step based on religious discrimination. Mr. Walter, you have the floor.
Yes. Thank you, moderator. And thank you so much for the organizers for giving me this opportunity to share about the Christian situations, the minorities persecution in Pakistan. The minorities in Pakistan are in pathetic situation. I would like to start it from the beginning of Pakistan. In 1947, on 11th August, the liberal and secular leader of the nation, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, said in his first constitutional address that everyone is free to go to their churches, to go to their temples, to go to their mosques. The state have no concern with any citizen's religion. Everyone is free and everyone is a Pakistani citizen in a context of the country. But after that, unfortunately, Mr. Prime Minister Liaquat Ali Khan, he migrated from the Uttar Pradesh. The people who came from there to Pakistan, they called it a religious migration. So they started a religious system in the country. And that's the reason in 1973, during the Zulfikar Ali Bhutto regime, in the beginning, in the constitution, the first amendment was made regarding the borders of the state. But on the other hand, with the religious fundamentalist pressures and influence in the country, they made a second amendment which was based on a religion. And in this amendment, which was made in 1974, it defines the definition of a Muslim. So with this definition, they called the Ahmadiyas and they announced the Ahmadiyya and they declared the Ahmadiyas as a minority religion. After this, Mr. Muhammad Zia-ul-Haq came. He was a famous dictator in the world and made many amendments against the human rights and against the minorities. And I would like to share by this opportunity that I belong to a Pakistan, a country where from the 70 years, 36 years, the dictators have been ruled, and only for 34 years, the democracy, the so-called democracy, I can say, they ruled. So when dictator Muhammad Zia-ul-Haq came to country, he ruled, he made amendment in the Article 295, which is called 295B. 295B, actually he amended in the 295A because he wanted to glorify his allies, which were the religious people. So by this amendment, if a person can desecrate to the Holy Quran, he should be imprisoned for a life. But by this amendment, his allies, his religious people, the religious companions were not happy. So again, he made amendment in 1986 to glorify them, and he made 295C article, which is for the death sentence of any person if he do act, speak, or write, or any act he do against the Prophet Muhammad. By this amendment, before it, there were only 10, 12 cases. But after this, there are 1,000 cases. And in blasphemy cases, if someone is elect for this issue, in many cases, we saw that he has assassinated on the spot, or he have been sent to jail, and then in a jail he is not safe. And in many cases, we saw on a ground that they have been assassinated even in a jail. And then if a person is saved in a jail and he gone for the court trials, then maybe he will be assassinated in a court trial. There is an example of Manzoor Masih. He was assassinated in court trial. And on the other hand, there is an example of Asia Bibi, the global famous victim Asia Bibi, who is still in a jail, in a prison, under the bar. In 2010, he was announced by the court verdict of Sheikhupura, it's a district and session court, for the death sentence. But after that, the High Court have been denied to proceed her case, and now, more recently, in the last October, her case was in a Supreme Court, and Supreme Court sitting judge said that he could not proceed her case. Because before this, many judges have been scared, threatened, and in some cases, if a judge give a verdict in a favor of victim, he cannot stay in a country. And in some cases, they fled from the country. So there are a lot of examples. Some people said that the other religions, persons have also victimized by blasphemy. But their situation just remain by their individual. But when a case comes to Christian or any other minority, the communal attacks happen, the assassinations happen. So that's a different from the other victims and from the Christian victims. The constitutional barriers are also a worse thing for the minorities. In the Constitution of Pakistan is biased. From its Article 2, it said that Islam is a state of religion. Islam is a state of religion, not that all religions are the citizens of the nation, of the country. So, after constitution, there is no voice by the representative of minorities. That's another subject. And it's directly linked with the rights of minorities. The minorities and the Christians have experienced 3-4 times the political electoral systems, the political systems. For example, before Ziaul Haq regime, it was a giant electoral system. During dictator Ziaul Haq regime, it came a separate electoral system. And when in 1999, Mr. Pervez Musharraf, he was also a military dictator, he introduced a giant electoral system. But it's also violated the Constitution of Pakistan. Because in Constitution of Pakistan, according to the Article 51 and 226, every person have to be elected by the direct votes. But in the present system, minorities come by the reserve seats in the assemblies. But on the other hand, the Muslims representatives come by the votes, and even the minorities, the Christians, the other minorities give them the votes. So this is a contradiction. And as a result, our representatives who are in the assemblies, they are just puppets in the hands of the authorities, in the hand of the parties, of the government, of the rulers. If someone have a good relationship with any ruler, with any party head, with any parliamentarians, they can come in the assembly. So you can imagine how they can speak in a favor of the Christians and the minorities. We have also some problems in the curriculum. The curriculum is a base actually of the nations who come forward with the good minds, with the open-minded, with the productive thoughts. But unfortunately, in Pakistan, the kids who study, there is a biased curriculum. And in a curriculum, personally I have been studying in my school age, there is a written that the Christian and Jewish and Hindus cannot be the friends of the Muslims. They are called as infidels. They are called as second citizens. So what the nation will grow up, what the people can do for the nation as a citizens, this is a biased curriculum. And on the other hand, the Muslims who memorize, the Muslim students who memorize the Quran, they got 20 extra numbers rather than the other minority students. So they come on a merit and they go in universities, colleges, and got a good status. So there is another problem, and our organization have submitted in a writ petition in a court proceeding. That's another story. Socially, we are boycotted, we are neglected, and I would like to give only one example of it. That if as a minority, I start my food items business in a city market, nobody will come and buy, nobody will buy food. And maybe within 1-2 days when the people will know that a Christian person is selling food items and infidel is selling a food item, so they will hate and maybe they will destroy and maybe they will kill. So that's attitudes and behaviors leakage. That attitudes and behaviors should also be changed in our society. And there is another issue of forced conversions and forced marriages. In most recently, in a province of Pakistan, the Sindh province, they taken a good step, the courageous step. They passed the bill in their province. It's called the Minorities Protection Bill. And after that, it came to the National Assembly. National Assembly started to proceed this bill. And you know, when it was tabled in a parliament, the band organization's head, Hafiz Saeed, he organized a big event in a public, in a street, and the other religious people also organized the big events and said and opposed boldly, bravely, and said if the National Assembly will pass the bill, they will oppose on high level. So, with their pressure, the National Assembly and the Senate, they postponed this plan to start this bill. And even there was a forced convergence bill, it called Hindu Marriage Act, but forced convergence bill also. So they also opposed on high level. So these are the problems. These are just few examples. There is a lot to share with you. And international community is doing such a great job, but it's a question from me as a human rights activist who is working on the ground, that what the international community have done only for one case, Asiya Bibi. She is just in a prison, she is mentally and physically ill, and a lot of other cases, they are waiting a voice from their international companion. So it's a question. I just have few recommendations, not a lot, just one, two recommendations.
We have several presentations.
Okay, just one recommendation, that international community, if give Pakistan GSP plus status, they have to condition it by the protection of religious minority, and the same in other assistance. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Okay, so maybe we'll just take the opportunity to go to Q&A. Or maybe we'll just take the opportunity to go to a few questions while we sort of wait for the video to get going. Anybody would like to ask a question from the floor? And in the state, would you like to ask the question?
Good afternoon. I would like to address my question to the Mr. David Walter. Could you please tell us about the difficulties you faced in making of the documentary, this one?
Thank you so much for your question. Actually, this is not a question for only one documentary. It's a fact-finding work. On the ground, we do fact-finding work because our organization have a helpline. The religious minorities call us and then we start our work. So on the ground, when our team go for fact findings, for documentation, for documentaries, there are a lot of problems we face by the religious fanatics, we face by the people who are against this work. So on the ground we face some also the state actors and non-state actors. I don't want to specify the names because I have to return back on the ground again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Walter. Any other questions? Yeah. Yes, go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Peter. Just a question for Mr. Naveed. As a Christian yourself, can you please tell us how and what it is to live as a Christian in Pakistan?
How and worse? Yeah, you can.
We can. Even though it's addressed to Naveed, but maybe we can have also the Reverend can also maybe ask the question.
Yeah.
Answer the question. Sure.
Can we have the question again?
What is it to live in Pakistan?
As a Christian.
As a Christian, how is it to live in Pakistan?
As a Christian.
Yeah. It used to be like it was mentioned before, it used to be very good at that time when I was born in 1945. And after that, in 1947 when Pakistan was founded, it was very good. But as Ms. Javed mentioned that, slowly, the condition has deteriorated to the extent that now it is very difficult to live in as a Christian in Pakistan, because the persecution, as I mentioned, it takes place at every step, no matter who you are. You know, the persecution is of different kind. It's not necessarily the persecution, the physical persecution, the persecution, mental persecution. Wherever, like we said, you can't find jobs. You cannot be employed. You know, that's all persecution, part of persecution, and that's why thousands and thousands of people have left Pakistan, and they have taken asylum in Thailand and Malaysia and Philippines and Sri Lanka. And like I mentioned, I had a video conference with those people, and those people are crying because of the fact that Thailand has already established a jail where they see anybody on the ground, anybody outside, they just arrest him. And he's put in the IDC, which is called International Detention Center. And those people are languishing in that jail. Some have even died. So you can well imagine what is the condition raw on the ground in Pakistan. It's terrible. So many times, you know, if you come out, if you have a job, if you have your business, you never know when you are going to be attacked. And as I said, you know, they're looking for the soft targets. And soft targets, Christians are very soft targets. And those are so vulnerable that they are at the hands of the extremists. You know, any time, no life is safe at this time, especially Christians.
I'd just like to answer your question, sorry if you don't mind, in one word. Day-to-day life of a Christian, conform. Every step, walking, talking, living, listening, speaking, you conform. So you can imagine what would that be day to day.
You could spell it as H-E-L-L.
What is that?
We're not sure. We're not sure yet if the microphone is working. Is it working? Okay. So we'll continue to we'll just continue with Q&As. Does anybody have any other questions they'd like to ask of the panel? Yes, go ahead.
So I have a question for Mr. Czarnecki. So what can European countries like Poland do to improve the condition of the Christians in Pakistan? Thank you.
Thank you very much for this question. So far, Polish government have any strong relationship between Poland and Pakistan. Yeah? So we don't have even economical relation on the big level. But I think working together with another European countries, it's difficult because Poland is very Christian country. Yeah? It's almost 99% of the Polish population the Christian. In other European countries, many of the governments, because it's many socialists, they thinking that they have the maybe not against religion, but they don't want involvement about the religion issue. But I think we have to work together with other European countries and speak in the not in the by one to the Pakistan government in other countries, but trying to implement the European Union maybe to this kind of issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman back there, yes?
My name is Ahmed Qureshi, and I'm from Islamabad, Pakistan. I'm a journalist. I've also have worked and campaigned for Asia Bibi, who's in jail. I'm Muslim, of course, but I come coincidentally from a house where my stepmother and my stepsister both are Christians. And there are many, of course, hundreds and thousands of families like that in Pakistan. But we have a problem with an extremist mindset that we're dealing with. I have a question actually for all the panelists, and that is, I myself as a Muslim, while campaigning on TV, I also have a TV show on one of the Pakistani channels, and when I and my team, we tried to campaign for Asia Bibi, we did face, of course, an extremist mindset that was very reluctant to argue and debate on that, and had a very fixed mindset. But of course, being a Muslim, it helped me to get across that and sustain my campaign on various grounds. In my analysis of the situation in Pakistan, and of course you all have explained it very well, most of the extremism that we've seen, the incidents, happened over the last 15 years after 9/11, the war on terror. And we have almost, 70 or 80,000? We have two gentlemen panelists from the armed forces. You're probably more aware than I am. We have about 70 to 80,000 Pakistanis killed during the last 15 years because of this war on terror, fighting extremist groups. Now, most of these 70 or 80,000 Pakistanis killed are actually Muslims, which does not sort of take away from what the minorities are suffering. But the point is that the extremists and the terrorists are attacking all Pakistanis. And Christians are the softer target, being, of course, a minority, smaller in population, and an easy target. So my question to you is basically, can we put things in perspective and see this as a nation that is deeply troubled in a very troubled region where we have, of course, Afghanistan, you have these wars, and then you have every segment of the population is a target for these extremists, including Muslims. I received death threats and threats from extremist groups, despite being a Muslim, because I spoke in favor of Asia Bibi. And it was my view that she was wrongly convicted in that blasphemy case. And of course, you have many Pakistani Muslims who are fighting against this blasphemy law that you just mentioned. So my question is very simple. The persecution of Christians in Pakistan, is it because the country wants to persecute the Christians, or is it because you have a situation, the war on terror, 15 years, 70 or 80,000 people killed? Most of them actually are Muslims, but also all the other minorities. My question to all of the esteemed panelists. Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to start?
I would say a comment and I'll leave it to Walter to explain. Thank you very much for your support for ASEAN, number one. It is really, really appreciated, and I did mention it. It's the progressive like you that come to help. But I think your perspective about what put into perspective and what I say put into perspective, we are two at the opposite ends. When you talk about past 15, 20 years, remember one thing, that in Pakistan, the general population among the Muslim population, apart from people where my background, where I come from a mixed Muslim-Christian home and you come from partially a mixed Christian home, it's a little different. Throughout Pakistan, from inception, there was always a dislike, there was always a separation of Christians in a very mild form. You and me talk about cities. You go to the rural areas, this also existed then, but it wasn't violent, it wasn't too much in your face, but it existed. What happened over the years is not because of terrorism only, not because of the fundamentalism in Afghanistan or the terrorist war, the Soviet war. Way before that, it had started growing because of the power of the clerics. I remember in the 60s, I'm an aged man, I'm 70 years old, that in the 60s, the students' union used to be, of the college student unions, were all left-wingers, because then Marxist Leninism and all that was popular, and suddenly the government started being afraid of them. They were becoming militant. We were a very pro-American country, and they started promoting the Jamaat-e-Islami Student Federation, and soon Islamic Union started coming to place. So it has been very gradual, this escalation against minorities, against religion. When you say more Muslims have been killed, obviously there are more Muslims, as Jimmy just said, James Liu, 1.5 or 6%. So percentage-wise, I think we're probably very high. But yes, escalation has taken place because of terrorism, but a Christian is only killed because he's a Christian. The Muslim terror is happening because of other reasons. They want to take over the government, they want to throw away democracy, they want to impose Sharia law, they want to bring in their school of thought. These are wars between regions, between provinces, between tribes, between concept of future of Pakistan. But a Christian is subdued, put in his place, or persecuted only because of his religion. That's it. That's the difference.
Mr. Qureshi, it's nice to see you. I watch your show regularly, so it's nice to see you here. I would like to just add in one line that Christians persecuted twicely. First as a citizen of Pakistan in a general attacks, And then as a religious minority, they are also persecuted, they are attacked. So twicely we are victimized. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and you're very brave for doing what you're doing, and I mean that sincerely. I remember when I was a member of Parliament in Canada, we had Minister Shahbaz Bhatti come before us in the committee, and he spoke to us in privately at the Subcommittee on Human Rights of the Foreign Affairs Committee, and we were sort of, at times we were a little bit critical of him as being minority minister. Why was he not more outspoken on these issues of Christian persecution and so forth? And when he did speak, he said, I have a bullet target in my head. And we didn't really think that he was really that serious, but he died, he got killed literally a month after being in Canada. So speaking out in Pakistan against issues like religious persecution, there's death threats against you. It's serious business. And there's a lot of people who get killed, Muslims and non-Muslims, for speaking about minority rights. So you're very brave to do what you're doing, and you're absolutely right that the threat is really real, and it's unfortunate that that is the case. I don't know if okay. Thank you very much. We appreciate all of you for coming and to deal with this very important issue. I think the panel, we had an excellent panel of speakers who could speak from the heart, who know firsthand experience of what's happening there in Pakistan. And I thank you very much for your interest, and we all ask for your support. Thank you very much.